What if the smartest people out there don't disappear because they hate everyone? What if instead they pull away because they finally discovered something about human behavior that most of us completely miss? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're exploring a seriously fascinating phenomenon. I want you to picture this. You suddenly stop replying to certain messages, you actively dodge those draining, unnecessary conversations, and you start feeling strangely disconnected from people you used to care deeply about. If you secretly feel that universal spark of joy when someone cancels plans on you, let me tell you, you are definitely not alone.
So, have you ever quietly distanced yourself from people you once cared about? It's a heavy thought, I know, but it's absolutely crucial to understand that this quiet transformation is a completely normal, very common human experience. Now, from the outside looking in, this distancing can honestly look like a sudden act of hostility or even arrogance. People might assume you're just cutting them off because you think you're somehow better than them. But psychologists have actually found that as our self-awareness grows, we naturally become way more selective about where we invest our time, our attention, and our emotional energy. It isn't sudden, and it definitely isn't hostile.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The quiet transformation. Moving beyond the myth.
What looks like someone just disappearing from the outside is almost always a deeply internal evolution. The common myth is that highly intelligent individuals pull away because they simply dislike being around others, that they're arrogant or misanthropic. But the reality? The reality is completely different. They're disappearing due to a profound, growing self-awareness. You see, when your self-awareness really sharpens, you stop functioning on autopilot. You become highly intentional. You start to weigh literally every interaction, deciding exactly where you want to spend your very limited emotional energy.
Which brings us to Section 2. Seeing the hidden patterns. From looking to reading.
Now, what's really interesting here is how our brains evolve. Early on in life, we all go through a kind of naive socialization. Life just feels normal, right? Friends make you laugh, conversations seem to hold meaning, and you believe what people say simply because you've never been given a reason not to. Early on, most of us just look at others, but highly intelligent people eventually start reading them through pattern recognition. This is an incredible psychological process where a self-aware brain rapidly connects behaviors and intentions that previously seemed totally unrelated. The more experience you gain, the faster your brain spots all the little inconsistencies. Suddenly, people don't look any different, but they start to feel entirely different to you. In everyday life, this basically means noticing the small, subtle things that everyone else just ignores. You know the ones you catch that smile that doesn't quite reach someone's eyes. You hear a compliment that sounds sweet on the surface but clearly carries a heavy undercurrent of hidden jealousy. You notice the friend who only seems to remember you exist when they need a favor, or those loud supporters who completely vanish the exact moment you actually succeed. Once your brain starts recognizing these specific behaviors, it is absolutely impossible to unsee them.
And this realization totally changes how everyday interactions feel. The distance begins because you finally stop confusing mere attention with genuine connection. You realize that protecting your peace is way wiser than trying to please everyone. You become incredibly careful about who you allow into your inner circle because you recognize the massive cost of keeping up appearances with people who aren't truly in your corner.
Let's move on to Section 3. Protecting your mental space. The exhaustion of awareness.
So pulling away doesn't happen because someone just loves isolation. It happens because this hyper-awareness becomes incredibly draining. The great psychologist Carl Jung profoundly observed, until we become aware of what's happening inside our own mind, we'll keep believing that everything happening around us is just fate. Take a second to really think about that. Intelligent people start to realize that the drama and friction around them isn't just random fate. They realize that a lot of people aren't even reacting to reality. They are reacting to their own unhealed fears, insecurities, and hidden emotional turmoil.
Let's break down those hidden emotional patterns. You start to see that the person constantly criticizing you, they might secretly just envy your progress. The person who's always interrupting you might just lack the confidence to actually listen and engage. And that person who always demands your attention may simply be terrified of being ignored. When you see these mechanisms at work behind the scenes, a massive shift happens. You stop taking things personally. You completely stop wasting your energy trying to fix people who have absolutely zero desire to change.
Now, setting these boundaries is very often mistaken for being cold. But let's get this straight. This isn't emotional coldness, it's emotional intelligence. Psychologists describe it as the ability to understand both your own emotions and the emotions of others, without allowing them to dictate your decisions. You stop reacting to every single argument, and you definitely don't answer every message, because you've learned a hard truth.
Every yes to the wrong person is actually a no to your own peace.
Moving to Section 4, clarity instead of loneliness, the biggest misunderstanding.
And this brilliantly illustrates the biggest myth we need to tackle head-on, the assumption that intelligent individuals retreat because they dislike humanity. It is not about falling in love with loneliness, folks. It is about falling in love with clarity. This is really the emotional climax of the journey. For the very first time, silence stops feeling like an empty void. Instead, it transforms into a sanctuary. It becomes a place where you can finally hear your own thoughts, completely free from the deafening noise of other people's expectations and demands. And modern psychology totally backs this up. Healthy solitude isn't just an escape, it is a highly productive state. It improves self-reflection, aids in emotional regulation, and greatly enhances your long-term decision-making. Highly self-aware people use this time to recharge and recalibrate their minds, rather than desperately chasing constant attention like everyone else seems to be doing.
All right, Section 5, finding your true self, building real confidence.
When you finally remove the noise of the crowd, you're left with yourself. Intelligent people use this space to read more, to think deeply, and most importantly, to fiercely question their own beliefs instead of just blindly accepting the opinions handed to them. This is exactly how true self-respect is built. It comes from within, rather than relying on applause or external validation from people who never truly understood them anyway. The ultimate priority completely shifts. The question goes from a desperate, "How can I fit in?" to a much more grounded, "Does this life reflect who I truly am?" And once that second question takes root in your mind, there is simply no going back. To the outside world, it looks like they vanished, but in reality, they finally stopped disappearing from themselves.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because the ultimate truth is this. Intelligent people rarely disappear overnight. They disappear one realization at a time. It's almost never a sudden snap decision.
Let's walk through this gradual evolution together. Say on day 1, you might just decide to stop arguing with people who have already decided they aren't going to understand you. Fast forward to month 3, and you find yourself completely stopping the chase for those one-sided friendships that only survive when you are useful to them. And by year 1, without making any grand announcements or burning bridges, you've quietly built a life that no longer depends on constant external approval. What looks entirely sudden to a bystander has actually been growing inside you for months, maybe even years.
Because let's face the facts. Time is limited. Mental energy is extremely limited. The people you surround yourself with quietly but powerfully shape the person you become. Becoming distant isn't about superiority, not at all. It's about becoming hyper-intentional with your absolute most precious, non-renewable resources.
So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. If you found yourself stepping back from certain people recently, don't ask yourself if you're just becoming antisocial. Ask yourself this: are you running away from people, or are you finally walking toward the life that is truly meant for you? Sometimes getting lost to the world is exactly how you find yourself. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to keep questioning the world around you.